This is a TalkStation original podcast.
On this week's episode of the Paper Boys podcast, JJ and I interview West Carteret teacher and cross-country coach Shelton Mayo. We talk about his struggle with retinitis pigmentosa, how he got into teaching and coaching, and the success of his running program at West. It all starts right now on the Paper Boys podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Paper Boys podcast. I'm JJ Smith.
And I'm Zack Nally.
We're reporters with the Carteret County News-Times. We are joined this week by not only West Carteret cross-country coach extraordinaire, not only West Carteret highly respected civics teacher, not only Detroit Lions #1 fan, not only husband to Tiffany and father to McKenna, but maybe more important and more impressive than all of that, the News-Times football panel winner of 2023.
Let's go.
Yeah, Mayo made us look bad.
Yeah, so that's the thing. We decided to do a fan-led pick'em panel this year.
Right.
And as it turns out, most fans are far better than the experts, including you and the second place guy, Thomas Outlaw. Both of y'all were neck and neck all year, making great picks. And that last week, I was watching every single game, and I knew what y'all's picks were. And every time somebody won or lost that put one of you ahead of the other, I write it down, oh man. And it was a lot of fun. Did you have fun doing it?
I did. And whenever I didn't know who to pick, I always asked Tiffany, and she would ask me what the mascots were of the team. So some of those picks could come from that, like the Hickory Red Tornadoes.
So a little bit of help there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And when he forgot to do it and he wasn't, or something, he skipped a week or something, I would take a picture on the Facebook and send it to him, and I would say, you need to get on this, please.
Yeah, you were pretty quick with it. Some people would wait until the last second, but you were always pretty early with it.
Forget it.
Yeah,
Shelton, I think, was like 10 games better than the rest of the so-called experts from the paper.
Was Brian North in that?
Brian North is in. All of us are. I'm
oh,
terrible.
Yeah, I think Shelton was like 10 or 15 games ahead of everybody.
And I mean, we're going online and we're looking at stats and defense and
advanced analytics.
Yeah, and sometimes it's just a gut thing.
It's all in the mascot.
Yeah,
the Red Tornadoes sound like they can get the job done.
Totally.
Yeah.
So yes, we're joined by Shelton Mayo, his wife Tiffany. So Shelton has just finished his 22nd season as cross-country coach.
Yes.
Boys and girls. A lot of times, sometimes just girls, sometimes just boys. But yeah,
assisted a little bit.
Some way, shape, or form, you were coaching boys and girls that whole time. Let's just say it. So in that time, you combine the boys and the girls seasons, 28 conference championships.
Wow.
17 regional titles.
Oof.
And 21 times they finished in the top 10 in the state. 3 times they were in the top 3. So all that would be pretty cool. But he's also done it by being legally blind.
Legally blind.
You'd like to joke that you're the only legally blind cross-country coach in the state, right?
I would like to think.
But you want to be special.
Definitely. I do would like. If there's other of you out there, please get in touch with me.
You go to a convention and somebody else there is too, and you're like, oh, okay. That's...
Thought you had that corner market.
Windsor is corner. 80, so I don't know if his eyesight is the best. But,
yeah.
But I think he's got me there.
So we'll talk about, and that's due to retinitis pigmentosa.
That is correct.
RP, as they say.
Yes.
All right. Well, we're definitely going to talk a lot about that. But let's start where all great stories do in the beginning. Johnston County, born and raised.
Wayne County Lionish, born and raised, but actually had a Wayne County phone number for Fremont and a Johnson County address. So there had to be some decisions made whether I went to Nahunta Elementary or Kinley Elementary. Oh. And Kinley Elementary had the ceiling fans, so that's where we went to Kinley in the big city. And we stayed in Johnson County. Basically, I was given the choice wherever I started, I had to stay K through 12.
And that's country.
That is country, yes.
Nahunta country.
Nahunta Pork Center country. And, 5-minute drive to the nearest gas station to get a soda pop, as they say, from the gas station when it was closed from the machine outside.
Feels like you should have coached and taught at East Carteret. That sounds like those people would have been your people.
True. I do relate to some people down there.
Then he got married, and
then I got married to the city girl.
Okay.
Had to find a balance there in between.
Well, she yes, true. She always lived near the water, and when I said something about the Neuse River, she didn't say too many nice things about that or the little
river.
That's
not the kind of water I know.
It's a little different.
She meant lake or coast, not pond or river.
And went to North Johnston High School.
North Johnston High
That's
School.
the not the Trojans.
Panthers.
Oh, the Panthers.
Yes.
West Johnson's the Trojans?
South Johnson is the
Oh,
Trojans.
okay. Do you got East, West, and North?
West Johnson
South?
was built after I graduated. So,
Okay.
Yeah, to show how much that area's grew up, Clayton High School was 2A with us my senior year. We went from 1A to 2A. And what is was Clayton High School by itself is now Clayton High School, Cleveland High School, Corinth Holders High School, and West Johnson. So a school of about 600 is about 8,000 students today. Wow. Since 1994 to 2023.
None of them people were around when you were growing up, huh?
None of those people were around.
Wow. So that's just become like a suburb of the Triangle, basically, huh?
Smithfield, Selma, starting to feel some of that growth.
Yeah.
And it's even in people where I grew up, they drove sometimes almost an hour to Greenville, almost an hour to Raleigh to work every day, and then trying to come back. But you had that country life with the higher paying jobs.
And ran at North Johnson?
No, there was that is no running at North Johnson.
Are you so old there was no running sports
So-
when you went to school?
So when I went to school at
That's
North
how
Johnson, it was baseball,
Okay.
basketball, football, golf, and we did have a track team, but no track. And so basically, we ran together as a team every day and did plow drills. And then football players would lift weights, basketball players would shoot hoops, and girls would be out there playing basketball too and lifting weights. And if you didn't play baseball or softball, then you kind of ran track to get in shape. There was no soccer, no wrestling, no swim, no tennis, no cross country, and
Certainly no lacrosse.
no lacrosse, no field, certainly no field hockey.
Certainly no swimming.
But the where the running came from me is we kind of did the run and gun with my basketball coach Gene Bird, and only had one gym, so 2 hours while the girls were practicing, about an hour study hall, then an hour basically of running and crunches and push-ups, and then when the gym door opened, you shot free throws tired, start off practice, and then you went through your drills and everything after that. So that's where a lot of my running came in, and I was always playing basketball. And went on to Pembroke,
All right.
small school, small classes, to be a teacher, one of the cheaper colleges in the state, and you would get the same amount of money teaching as you would if you went to Duke. So why pay all that money to go to a nicer school or more expensive school is what I meant to say, because I love Pembroke. And I kind of walked on the basketball team there, 6'5", 150 something pounds,
Not a
small
lie.
forward, power forward.
They were glad to have you.
And about, 2 months in, Fort Bragg Dragons exhibition game, I made it that far, maybe October. Some guys on the cross country team got busted for drugs, etc., and the cross country team needed some people to finish out the season for conference and regionals. And I'll never forget, they asked me about, I was really good at running and practice for basketball, and they asked if I was interested in doing cross country for Pembroke. And I said, well, I didn't know y'all had a ski cross country team, because I was watching the Olympics growing up. I didn't
you
know
don't
what
know,
cross-country
sure.
was.
Hey,
I had
cross-country, sure.
I was like, I've been skiing twice on some church trips in North Carolina, but give this a try.
Don't know if I can do it
Yeah,
competitively.
but, hey,
Give it a shot.
and ended up being top 8 out of everybody that went out, included some track people. And he said he would pay for my books and give me about $500 to $1,000 a semester if I did cross country and track. And looked at the basketball coach, and he's like, "Go ahead, son, go ahead." Like, because I wasn't gonna get any playing time. I was just doing it because I love sports that much, and everything kind of happened from that. I got better and better, and ran the 800 and the mile and cross country, and we got to practice with girls and travel with girls. So that was always nice too.
Well, 6'5", 150, you definitely sound like you were built for speed.
He's 6'5", 150. Those long legs. The wind blew, though, it blew me around the track.
Sorry.
And I still had the same size head. They would call me headquarters or blow pop. So
Nice.
Or Abe Lincoln. I had a
Yeah.
beard every now and then too.
And it comes in all shapes and sizes, right?
Right, and
This
yeah.
was pre-bobblehead. They might have called you bobblehead
Yes,
back in the
they
day,
could
huh?
call me bobblehead.
Yeah.
For sure.
Nice.
I think Tiffany called me that a few times. Whenever
He's got some in his room too, and I bought it just like him.
Well, when did you know you wanted to be a teacher, and then when did the coach kind of part come into that?
the teacher and coach part, Gene Bird, my basketball coach in high school, was in the Army during Vietnam, and huge Grateful Dead fan. Actually has a trailer, I believe, at Harker's Island. Also has a connection to Carteret County as far as vacationing here. And he was a big influence in my life. And he went on to become a principal at Eastern Wayne. Manny Lawson, I think, was at Eastern Wayne when he was there. And he was a big influence. A man by the name of Steve Herron, guidance counselor, was a big influence on that. And David Bagwell was probably the most well-known coach at North Johnson. He was a women's basketball coach. They always made it real far in the state playoffs every year. And he was a PE teacher that graduated from Wake Forest. And what was always hard about his class is you just didn't do the sport. You had to write a paper or do a test and fold it a certain way when you turned it in. And he always paid attention to details. I always liked Mr. Bagwell. And I got in some trouble some in high school, and teacher asked me a few times if I thought I was so smart, why didn't I teach the class? And I would get up and start trying to teach it. And he said, you have a talent. He said, you ever thought about coaching or teaching? And from there, we went on to Pembroke, had small class sizes, which was probably a better setting for me. Never diagnosed hyperactive or ADHD or anything like that, but I think he knew that's what I would need. If I would have gone to NC State or East Carolina with larger classes and more distractions, I don't know if it would have turned
Lost
out
in
the
the
same
shuffle
way.
a little bit there.
Yeah, it would have been a number, not a person. And he kind of made that point to me where I understood where he was coming from. So Mr. Bird, Mr. Steve Herron, a guidance counselor, and Mr. Bagwell were probably the three people that kind of got me in that direction.
I'm Ryan Kelly,
I'm Lynn Schultz.
and we're the hosts of the Senior Moment podcast.
Each week, we bring you conversations with experts right here in our community about the common and uncommon challenges facing our aging population and caregivers.
We discuss the challenges of caring for a loved one with dementia, as well as the importance of health planning, family history, and much more.
Join us every week for Senior Moment, streaming now on Spotify, YouTube, and at CarolinaCoastOnline.com.
This is West Carteret coach Will Kennan, and this is the Paper Boys podcast.
So we're at UNC Pembroke, and where do we think we're probably going to end up teaching?
So UNC Pembroke, actually my senior year, I had a Dr. Brayboy, former superintendent of Wayne County, and we're all together with K through 12 teachers, and he said, I'm going to put somebody on the spot to do a lesson plan in less than 5 minutes and get up here and speak in front of all the teachers. And somehow I got picked, and I did it. And afterwards, he said, I used
Big
to be
head
a
again.
superintendent at Wayne County, and what if I gave a call to a school there? Would you be interested in a job? And this was like March before I graduated.
Before you graduate, wow.
So I had an interview at Southern Wayne High School with Eddie Radford, which was married to Wilbur Shirley's daughter, which is Wilbur's Barbecue in Goldsboro.
Wow, famous.
And so little Wilbur's Barbecue swooed me over. And I had also been to, I went to Fayetteville 71st High School for an interview.
Oh, wow.
And after going through the outdoor gate with the pass and then getting through the gate at the door with another cop to get into the school, Wayne County, close to back home, near Mount Olive, North Carolina, about probably 25, 30 minutes from where I grew up. Close, but not too close. And that's where I started my teaching. That's my teaching gig. Greg Warren, former Pittsburgh Steelers long snapper, was one of my first students and first athletes on the track team. And his dad was the athletic director, Bob Warren. And Greg won a few Super Bowls with the Steelers as their long snapper.
And at the time, you were coaching everything.
Yeah, I was coaching cross country. I started indoor track. We didn't have a track at Southern Wayne there either. I did ninth grade boys basketball, and one of the kids on my ninth grade team went on to play college ball. To show you how strong basketball was there, that you had ninth grade, JV, and varsity. And then I did track in the spring, so I was coaching 4 sports.
Wow.
Met Tiffany.
All that time on your hands, young and
Yes.
full
Yeah,
of
I didn't know
energy,
that.
and you said, put me to work. And
Yeah.
they said, you got it.
Trying to solve the world's problems and coach as much as I could. And anybody can run. I remember saying that. And kids said, well, I've got asthma and I'm going to die, coach. Not everybody can run. But he still came out to try to get better. And it helped him a little bit with his basketball. So, yeah, Southern Wayne High School is where all that started. And Dr. Brayboy, professor at Pembroke from Robinson County originally, and had gone back to be in charge of the education program gave me that connection back home. But
So
good word.
how did you make it all the way here to Morehead City?
So, went to a small municipality local government workshop at Western Carolina University, my third year teaching at Southern Wayne, and saw a blonde
Oh, my
when we
goodness.
checked
Goodness.
in and
always
asked
a
her where
girl.
she was from, and she was from Wilmington at New Hanover High School as a volleyball coach, and asked her out. Point blank said she was busy, so that didn't go well the first night. But about the second or third time later in the week,
It's very persistent.
Wow.
I was pretty persistent.
Always has been pretty persistent.
It's okay to
this
ask
day.
a couple times.
I knew we were
See
going to
what's
the
going
Cherokee
on, you know?
casinos together.
Like
and
4
asked
times
her-
a day.
Oh,
wow.
okay. So
He was
wear,
very persistent.
wear him
Very-
down
I just
strategy.
grinded her down
exactly
to a pulp.
right.
But 3 months later, we were engaged.
That's true.
Wow.
Also
story.
persistent with that.
Knew what I was
Maybe
looking
she was
for.
just scared of how quickly she was gonna fall for you. That's what happened. Was she knew?
I don't know, something about, I think the first time I went to Wilmington to meet her, she made mashed potatoes, fried chicken, and green beans. And
I knew
packed me dinner
Started
to go
who I
back
was
home to
dealing
Wayne
with.
County.
Yeah.
I knew
And,
Straight
exactly
to the
who I
heart,
was
through the
dealing with.
stomach, right?
Yes. And
True.
yeah, so old fashioned, but at the same time a coach, and had a very successful volleyball program. She played at Hoggard on some teams that played for state championships.
True.
For a very famous coach, and if they would have had libero back then, I think she probably would have crushed
Tell
it.
everyone else.
Crushed it.
Did they
But,
not have libero in the 1970s? Or?
Oh, ouch.
No, but
That is
I don't-
fire
I don't
burning
know.
Zack right now from her eyes.
I don't know when that changed. It
I didn't
had
know
to
that
be,
it didn't exist.
It had to be in the early
After you started
2000s ish.
Okay.
Oh, that's really recent then.
So it was just everybody was just out there.
Well, you still had
rotating.
defensive specialists like me
Okay.
because I'm 5'3". I was not going to be
Okay.
on a state championship volleyball team.
Gotcha.
Unless I was
Outside
in the-
hitter, right? No,
right.
yeah.
No, none of that. I was a defensive specialist, but then the rotations. So I was in for a player, and then once she was on the front row, I had to wait for her to come back to the back, and then
Right.
I would go in. Now the libero rules, it's the same position, just different rules about how they can substitute.
They can be out there for a lot longer.
Yeah, they can
It's
go in
just
and
being
out.
a defensive.
Pretty much at
Yeah.
at
So do you
will.
get to West and bring him with you? Is that how that
So,
works?
no. What's the high school they built in Wilmington that we both got hired at to start with?
I was teaching at New Hanover when he was still at Southern Wayne, and we were both coaching at the time. Of course, we were young, so we could do that and still
Sounds
have
like
a
you're
long distance
commuting.
relationship.
Yeah, yeah.
like it was.
You'd met in the mountains.
Like today, I can't go to the living room. Like, I
doubt.
can't be bothered with that. But
Text.
then I could drive,
Oh, that's right. They
first
built
thing in the
Ashley.
morning. And they built Ashley High School. And so I basically said, I'm going to live around the water. I'm not going to live in Dudley where he was living.
so sorry.
No
Dave.
offense to
Yeah,
Dudley.
just not. So we looked. We were
pickles
sort of
every
like
year from Mount Olive.
looking around. That was
True story. Pickle pack every Christmas for coaches.
Wow.
I didn't know they had pickled okra until
Not too
then.
bad.
I said, I like you, but not that much. So we were looking around at positions, and at the time I was coaching volleyball too, and he was at a track meet and ran into a coach at West Carteret.
Jerry Klontz.
Yes, and said, "Hey, we have these positions open," and he was like, "Yeah, I got to drag this chick along with me."
Well, Ashley hired us, and then
Yeah.
all the
Yeah,
the teachers that were in Wilmington wanted to go to the new school,
Right.
and I was an outsider, so it pushed me. I was the last person that got
Oh
pushed out.
wow!
We
So
were already
if you
looking-
had been accepted,
I
you
would
guys
have been
would've
at
stayed
Ashley.
we would have
there.
been in Wilmington.
I would have
Wow.
lived between Carolina Beach and Wilmington. We already looked at houses that were about the same price as
That
houses
was a blessing,
here.
though. He wouldn't. I don't think he would definitely not have liked it. We don't talk about big city. That was a big city to him.
Yeah.
And so I think he liked moving here much, much better.
So we had a double interview when we came
Yes.
to West Carteret with Gordy Patrick
At
and
the same
Ralph
time.
Holloway.
Mm-hmm.
And Ralph Holloway said, "Tiffany, I've seen you beat Carolyn Temple in the playoffs, so I know you can coach volleyball. Mr. Mayo, what can you do?" And I said, "So this is going to go all on me?" And he said, "Well, I know she's a great teacher, know she's a great coach." He said, "I ran track around Burlington, so I know a few things." So he started asking me all these track questions. And Mr. Holloway,
Both those gentlemen in the
Mr.
North Carolina
Holloway-
High School Athletic Association
Correct.
Hall
Yes.
of Fame, by the way.
double interview, and Mr. Holloway, we still joke about that today. But yeah, when Mr. Holloway looks at you real serious and real stern, I mean, you better be ready. But I guess we were okay out of the few people that applied. There were 4 social studies positions that opened up that year,
Oh wow!
so we were lucky.
Did
Former
you
Mike
both
Bradley.
teach the same?
We were
class,
both social
or?
studies teachers. At New Hanover, I was teaching like upper level government AP comparative politics, and I also had taught world history before. But Shelton was always, I think, in civics mostly.
Civics, psychology, world history, world cultures back in the day.
And then it wasn't, you don't really specialize.
Okay.
Until you get to be a veteran teacher. When you're a young teacher, you teach whatever they tell you to.
I was gonna say, did you not teach math at some point?
No.
So
You're
for
thinking
those
about
listening-
Colin Mayo, Mr.
No.
Mayo.
So for those listening, I had Miss Mayo here as a teacher. I still see you as Miss Mayo. I don't,
That's okay.
Teachers don't have first names.
No.
It's not real.
We don't exist outside of the West Carteret
It's a construct. And I guess I thought I had you for a math class, but I guess I had you for a social studies class.
Yep.
And I was not lucky enough to have Mr. Mayo as my teacher. I was lucky enough to have Miss Mayo.
Yeah.
I don't think she would have said the same thing at the time. I was a difficult student, and I liked to challenge everything around me. And do you remember having?
I
me
do
as a
remember.
student?
I do remember that. I
Bless your
remember
heart.
thinking that you and I were really good at debating things. I remember that you wanted to be a writer at the time.
Yeah.
And did some stuff too, to make newspapers and work with Mr. McGinn and things like that. So I enjoy students like that because that's what makes teaching fun.
Bless your heart. That's great. I wanted to be a writer. I ended up working in a newspaper instead. So we all got to follow our dreams to a certain extent.
So Tiffany's coaching volleyball, you're coaching cross country and some track, and talking about legends like Gordy Patrick and Ralph Holloway. There was another legend there you were involved with, Mr. Jack Young.
Mr. Jack Young, I had met at cross country meets, and so when I first came to West, there was just cross country coach. There was not men and women's, and I think my first year it was unpaid. I just was an assistant.
Wow.
And I don't remember second year or first year at the awards banquet, Jack had asked me if I ever wanted to be the head coach one day, and I said yes. And I remember we did the whole banquet they did all the sports in the auditorium. So you had to wait and wait and wait and wait. And I remember Mr. Young went up there, and he doesn't say much. And he said, I would like to announce that I'm retiring and going to help Mr. Mayo next year. I'm going to be his assistant. He'll be the head coach next year. And I heard back from Larry Lewis. Me and Larry knew each other then. And Larry had been waiting for that spot to open up. So he was pretty fired up. Who is this guy from off Shelton Mayo coming in, taking my cross-country spot that I've been waiting at Moorhead Middle for to maybe go to West and coach track and cross-country. But Jack just said it, and Mr. Patrick's like, okay. And so there was nothing else to it, no interviews, just we switched spots, and he helped me and drove the bus. And some days he made it to practices, some days he didn't, but he was laid back and kept me chill, which has always been important. For me when I coach, I can get a little uptight at times.
They were close outside of coaching too.
Yes, he lived on Atlantic Beach and didn't have any children or a family and had a guest room. So sometimes we would find ourselves over Atlantic Beach and we'll spend the night at the guest house there and like a beach house. So yeah, Jack, we were tight.
And sadly, Jack is no longer with us.
Yeah, died in the parking lot of the old Gold's Gym there near where Belks is.
He's very
was still working
50s,
out in his 50s.
Oh, gosh.
Had only been retired from
he
teaching.
came
for like
out
a
of
year or
Gold's
two.
Gym from working out and had a heart thing in the parking lot.
Yeah.
Between the parking lot and his truck. I think he got the door open but couldn't get
And still was a good athlete, right? At that
Oh,
point?
he was.
Yeah.
He
Running.
was in lifting weights. He
Yeah.
believed in the slow weights because he said it gave him the beach bod.
He looked like
He
a
did
surfer,
the-
right?
He did.
He
He
did.
was tan and
Yeah.
had a place at the beach, and he
Yeah.
looked like he was in his 30s and he was in his 50s.
I know it.
I'm Pastor Carl Zarowski.
I'm Pastor Brian Lassiter. And I'm Pastor Bill Clear. You know, right now, more than ever, faith matters.
Every Sunday here on the radio, a few local pastors discuss faith in the news and how it relates to you.
We explore local, state, and national issues through the lens of faith.
We look at the role of Christians in our world and ask, should the faithful be doing more?
Join us Sunday mornings at 8 for Faith Matters only on the Talk Station.
I'm West Carteret coach Lindsay Howell, and you're listening to the Paperboys podcast.
So you get to West Carteret, you find there's some talent-rich group of kids there who can win some state championships, get you in some conference championships, all those I rattled off, regional, do well at the state titles meets, and you're what, in your mid-30s, late 30s, and starting to notice some things are starting to get a little weird when you're going into, what, movie theaters and stuff, you said?
Oh, yeah, yes. So whenever I would go to a place like the Masashi's, when I would go to Masashi's, the dim lights that are in there 24/7, I love that place, and the managers and the people there always help me out.
This podcast is sponsored by
so anyway, when I walk in, people would say, "Hey," and I couldn't see anybody. And like I would sit down, and my eyes, it would take about 5 to 7 minutes to adjust, and I thought that was what everybody had to deal with. And
you said, I'm just getting old.
And then I would look then I would look around, and I would see the people that I would say, "Hey," like, "Hey, Bree Talib," "Hey," like runners and people like that were there. And a little bit after that, I went to movie theaters. Going in, I couldn't see anything for a while. It took a while for my eyes to adjust, but coming out into the lights, almost like a snowblind. So like it also takes like 5 minutes for my eyes adjust to like bright lights like this. So when I go back outside, it'll be another adjustment for me.
For a while.
And went to get my bus license updated. And I don't want to say too much or get anybody in trouble, but they do the peripheral vision test. And I said that the flashing lights in the machine wasn't working. And they said, "You're not going to get out of driving an activity bus at West Carteret that easy. That'd be like $78.94. Update your bus license."
Wow.
And I said something to Tiffany when I got home, and I really hadn't been going to the eye doctor a lot. And I went to the eye doctor, and that's when they said something's not right, and I'm going to send you straight to UNC eye clinic, which they had an outpatient place in New Bern. So eye doctor, Dr. Garg, flew from Chapel Hill to New Bern once a week and would see patients as a retina specialist. And I'll never forget, like I drove there by myself not thinking it was going to be a big deal, and they dilated my eyes, and she said, "You want to hear the good news or the bad news?" I said, "Well, give me some good first, and then we'll get the bad out of the way." She said, "I'm one of the best specialists in the United States with the issue that you have. So give me the bad news." And that's when she said, "You have retinitis pigmentosa, and you're going to continue to lose your sight. We just don't know how fast." And she said, "But we're going to get you at UNC Chapel Hill and see what we can figure out." And some people with RP, when they find out that in their childhood they lose their sight completely before their teenage years. So there's about 100 to 200 different mutations that can cause RP, but it is all genetic. And went to UNC, and they
explain to them what that is. What does it mean?
Okay, so
to have RP, what can you see and what can't you see?
So the retina's dying from the outside inward, and when they showed me from a picture that they took, it looks like a slice of carrot with pepper on the outside where it's dying. So the cells are not orangey red, they're blackish gray, and that is the part that reflects light. So that makes total sense. If I was going from light to dark or dark to light, the light process and the reflection wasn't going as well.
So it's the opposite of macular degeneration, and it's essentially tunnel vision.
Right. So it's like I can't see your whole faces. Like I can see part of your face. If I look at your neckline, I can't see the top of it. If I look at your top of your head, I can't see below your nose. But as everything goes outward, it's still 20/25 vision. So
how about that?
Still see. I do my readers, things like that, and I do.
That's just age.
That's just age.
You got to get into some telescope action or somewhere.
So that was really hard. And I remember when I got diagnosed, it was a few weeks before Blake won our first state championship.
No, Blake Dodge.
Yeah. So like it was 2000 and.
This has been a long process.
9 or 10, maybe 10 or 11.
It was after McKenna was
11.
After McKenna was born, 2010 or 11.
Yeah. Wow.
So yeah, it would have been her
it's
sophomore
going on
year
12 years now.
So yeah, I remember that, and I was like, going into regionals and states, like, how long will I be able to see? You're asking all these questions because you're just learning about it. And I'm like, well, at the same time, the positive is here's Blake kicking butt. So that's why Blake's always been kind of special to me.
Was that a phone call he made that day to you to tell you?
I don't know if I told him on the way home or not.
I wasn't there because you drove yourself.
I drove myself.
And then that was the first thing. I was mad that he drove with his eyes dilated because you're not supposed to do that.
Right.
Well, I had the cool shade.
Which he every time we go to the eye doctor, he still keeps those glass
box
things,
out.
just
They're
the ones that are
awesome.
like in a roll and you put them on. He loves that. But then it was a conversation, and he's always been, even to me, like sort of nonchalant about it. Like, yeah, by the way, I have this thing. And so then, me, I'm a researcher. So that's immediately what I do is I get on what was at the time, a computer instead of my phone to get on the internet and find out. And then I went to the library and got books and stuff like that and just sort of tried to learn about it. But we still continue to learn more as things progress. Right. And then, we have the doctor's appointments and things like that, which are, at the time were a little bit shocking because we had to go up to a large city. At the time it was Chapel Hill, and now it's to Duke, into this massive medical complex type situation. And they would be throwing words at us like genetic testing
and when they first set me down,
clinical trials and things like that. It's daunting really for anyone who gets diagnosed with anything major. But
they did the DNA test and they set me down and they said, you have the USH2A gene, and there's another vision problem that's called Usher syndrome,
right,
where you don't just lose your vision, you lose your vision and your hearing. And when she said USH2A, I immediately like, holy crap, they misdiagnosed, because RP in the beginning, you're just losing your sight, then you lose your hearing at the end. And they're like, well, that's just what they named the gene because they thought it was Usher's, but it's really RP. But they left that on there, and I'm like, can you change a name from USH2A to something else? Because I thought I was going to lose my hearing too there when they said that at Carolina.
So it's been, and that part was scary, just all of that stuff, and trying to figure and navigate all of that and what it meant for our daughter to have the genetic condition. But all that has been worked out since 10 years ago or so.
My mom and dad were recessive carriers, so like I won the lottery. And the worst thing that McKenna,
that's one way to put it, right?
The worst thing, it's like a 1 in 10,000 disease or 1 in 5,000. And then with that mutation with two people to meet and have a kid and have the recessive genes, it is literally like winning the lottery.
Wow.
But the worst thing McKenna can do is carry it. It will never, because she doesn't have the recessive gene. So
not special enough.
Yeah, you're not special enough.
Well, that was a relief that day. You
That
found out
was
that.
it. Really was.
Yeah.
It really was. And that was Duke that did that.
Yeah.
And Carolina just wanted to guinea pig and do research for me. But Duke was the one that really started trying to find out more about the family part and what can they do to help with my vision loss instead of just research my vision loss.
So it's been 13 years now since you really first started to understand what was happening.
Right, and it was rough because I could see but I could not. So like I can't, like, even though I could not see well enough, I still could see well enough to drive. So what do? Use a cane and then get out of a car? Like that is really tough.
The questions that arise.
So I'm like, am I going to lose my job? And I remember meeting a programmer with SAS Institute that has what I have, and he's like, son, with the Disabilities Act, you should know as a civics teacher, you're never going to lose your job. He's like, we've got lawyer friends and all kinds of people that talk to it. He's like, just do a good job at what you do and be yourself. Right. And that's when I started being a little bit more open. I told Miss Heller and Joanna.
That was a while though, right?
That was a while. I kept it quiet for a while.
5 years or so after the diagnosis.
Yeah, I just kept it in-house with family. And Miss Heller, I told later on, and Joanna Dodge Miller now.
Close friends knew just to help out, really.
Turner knew later on once he became
McClanahan knew.
And McClanahan knew. And they did a good job keeping
You had a tight circle, though, huh? You had
a
principals, athletic directors, fellow coaches. That was about it.
Yeah. And kids would put their hands up in class. I'm like, why are you picking on me, not calling on me? And I really didn't see them. I couldn't be like, well, you're not, I'm sorry. I just looked over you. I'm tall and clumsy.
Right.
Played the tall and
we
clumsy.
started telling people, like the public, I guess you could call it, or letting students know maybe 3 years ago.
When we took our trip to New York right before COVID.
No, it must have been longer than that then.
It's longer than that.
You did like a Facebook post or something, right?
We did a Facebook post. I said, I'm not going to
Isn't that the way everyone gets their information?
That's right.
I'm getting rid of my driver's license and like, what's the best way to like just rip the Band-Aid and let it go? And I remember I quit driving. We went to New York that summer, and that was the first place I used the blind cane, the white cane.
Always up for a challenge, this one.
Right.
New York.
New York City. First trip to New York City ever.
That
now
the people
I'm
in New
use
York
a cane.
were very nice to me. Like I was shocked. I saw a different side of New York.
And you've always said it's like looking through a toilet paper tube,
it's like
right?
looking through a toilet paper tube, but I don't see anything in the dark. Like even when my eyes adjust, I'm pretty bad night blind now. About 9% visual field right eye, and about 5% left eye. In February, I go back and get all the tests and get updated.
The important part, though, is that you still do all the things.
I still do. A little
still
slower.
A good teacher, a good coach, all of this. I'm very positive about all of this. Like, it couldn't. I don't know how I would have dealt with it if he wasn't so positive all the time about, well, we'll just get through it and we'll handle it or we'll deal with it.
I think when I told Mr. Paletti, he's like, good to know you teach better with half an eye than most people do with 2 eyes. So and coach too. So that was nice of Mr. Paletti to say.
Nice.
I'm Ryan Kelly.
I'm Lynn Schultz.
And we're the hosts of the Senior Moment podcast.
Each week we bring you conversations with experts right here in our community about the common and uncommon challenges facing our aging population and caregivers.
We discuss the challenges of caring for a loved one with dementia, as well as the importance of health planning, family history, and much more.
Join us every week for Senior Moment, streaming now on Spotify, YouTube, and at CarolinaCoastOnline.com.
This is Daniel Barrow, the head football coach of the West Carteret Patriots, and you're listening to the Paper Boys podcast.
I think one of the most fascinating things about this is if it's not something that you've gone through, you can't really understand the degrees of which you losing your vision. Like in my mind, if I think about losing my vision, there's blurry vision, and then there's no vision. That's it. 1, 2, 3. But for somebody who's been going through this for the last 13 years, I imagine there are massive varying degrees of what you're going. You just mentioned a second ago that you said every 7 years?
I think we're about at the point now about every 7 years, about half my visual field. So I'm down to the 9% of my right eye and about 4 or 5 of my left. So I can kind of close my left eye, and like I know that's what I'm going to have in this eye, because that'll be about in half.
Wow.
And
so that toilet paper tube getting smaller and smaller.
Yeah. On my chair, I'm like, can I see the whole TV with just my right eye? Nope, but I can see it with my left. So like,
oh wow.
And it's such a subtle thing too. It doesn't like snap on and off. Right. So how do you know? Like just like a kid, how do they know that they're growing until you measure them on a wall? And so. Or something happens and you say, oh, I can't do that anymore. Or, whoops, I need to watch out for the dishwasher.
Or cutting grasses. Like I still am so independent. I use cones and I go back and forth from cone to cut my grass. And then I get Miss Mayo to come out and take a look and see what spots I miss.
Massive cones.
They are large.
They're the big orange cones, so I don't have
They're
to
probably
reach down.
4 feet high.
Construction cones.
So
But it's just little things like that I would have never thought about.
Sure.
I got a little insight into what life is like for y'all, because I'm going back and forth with you texting about setting this up, and you're like, well, let's get Tiffany into this. So it's a group text, and because Tiffany's going to be the one to drive you here, right?
Correct,
So
yes.
what's life been like? How's it changed over these past 13 years?
I mean, it's quite different. Like I am the master scheduler. Now I have a teenager who is that's crazy scheduling. And then Shelton would throw his scheduling in. Luckily, we all work and teach at the same place. So I can imagine that there are people worse off than me having to deal with that stuff. But stuff you miss, like dropping her off at school. Like we couldn't do that anymore. Or going to the grocery store. He doesn't go he doesn't pick milk up on the way home, right? So small things like that make a difference. So it made me
taking McKenna on little trips. That was
even
really
more
the
of a
things that
control
hurt
freak.
The most.
Yeah.
Oof.
Going to
And
the
I am
aquarium.
very
Yeah.
Independent and control freak. Like I'm an only child. I've always done everything on my own.
Used to standing on your own 2 legs.
Definitely.
Yep.
So like, I mean, and I've got friends like Mr. Sorolic and other people that give me rides, and her mom lives here now. But there's nothing wrong with calling Carteret Cab and asking for the non-smoking cab. And Mr. If I heard his name, I would know who it is. He'll come by and pick me up, and for most places, for $7, I get all around Carteret County for $7, like between here and Beaufort.
Is that the biggest thing driving? Is that bigger than anything else?
I think that was my biggest thing.
Yeah.
That was your biggest thing. And that's been the biggest life adjustment, I guess. There's a lot of adjusting that happens that, again, it's so subtle that you don't notice it. The way that we walk. I noticed that. I thought about that this morning because different people were coming into the school because we have exams. And I was thinking, I wonder what it must look like for Shelton always to be following me. Oh yeah, that's how it should be. But that's something like he always follows me, even when he's not holding my shoulder or something. He follows my head or whatever color shirt I'm wearing.
The place to be is by my side. If you get like 7 feet or 8 feet in front of me, I can like follow your calves or your shoulder.
Right.
And lock in. But like I've got to look out for ledges and like step ups. That's trailer hitches hit my shins. My feet go underneath it, but then I'll hit the trailer hitch. So like it's the little things like that. Wet floor signs are a big enemy.
That's always the worst in the school. He's not carrying his cane down this hallway because he's so used to it.
Confident. I don't need my cane. There's no students in the hall by myself. And then pow, like a wet
there
floor
goes a wet floor sign all the
goes
way down
about
the other
10
end.
feet away from me. Because I get
accident.
overconfident in places I'm comfortable at.
Yeah.
And the ironic thing is, for a while there, your class was upstairs at West, right?
It still is.
Still is.
Yeah, still
upstairs.
I like taking the stairs. Gives me a little bit of a workout.
How about that?
An elevator if I need it.
And that's the other thing that doesn't adjust. Like we don't have coffee tables. We can't leave things on the floor. Again, having a teenager is difficult with that, but small adjustments like that are something that I'm always on alert for. Things in the way, things, I'll
runner stretching. I tell them to play defense.
You have to.
If I'm walking towards you and you sit on the ground, I'm going to step on you.
Mm-hmm.
You got to speak up. My daughter's always been around that. She's always like, daddy, 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 daddy.
When she was little, it was tough because she was like knee height because he's so tall too. So it was like knocked her over a couple of times. But
you guys are operating like a kitchen where you're like corner coming around.
That is
or
exactly
what
it sounds like.
So many ninth grade freshmen that I probably knocked into the wall trying to use the bathroom.
That's right. That guy's so mean. I do not want him for class.
That guy just ran over me.
His shoulder checked me in the hallway.
And that's why I use the cane in like crowds because
it's a signal.
It's more
right
of a
away.
like, hey, get out of my way, and like I'm trying to be rude. But that's why some people will still stop me. I went walking in my neighborhood the other day. I feel pretty confident. And 3 people stopped. Shelton, it's about to rain. You need a ride? Or, I'll take you home. I'm like, no, man, I'm just walking 30 minutes. Are you sure you can get home? We're in a... Because they're used to seeing me with the cane.
The cane.
These are good friends of mine, but they still is kind of hard to understand. Sure. Are you blind or not blind? Is he faking or is it real?
Right.
It's kind of tough. I'm blind, but I can see a little bit.
And you're teaching and you're coaching.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, then you have people out there who will say, I'm legally blind, but they're driving cars because... Like when this process started, you can be a certain threshold but still have a certain ability.
Right.
But again, there's that varying
your
degrees.
best eye is under 20%.
Okay.
That's when you're legally blind.
Oh,
and supposed
wow.
to drive. But I probably went past that a little bit.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, I was hard-headed.
And you said you got at one point where you were just driving in the neighborhood, right?
Right, and McKenna's like, Dad, it's time to hang it up. So
well, that's like when the windshield gets frosted over and you only got that little hole right there, and you're like, I can make
That'll get you through the neighborhood.
I can get through
And luckily, we live close to West Carteret, so it wasn't like. And McKenna was at primary, so it was like one shot.
Oh right.
But there was a point where I was like, "You're not taking her to school anymore," because he had to take him out left turn.
I lived in Broad Creek up until after McKenna was born, so that was when I got diagnosed. That was part of moving to Morehead City to be near everything.
Sure.
Realized at some point that was going to happen.
I guess on the plus side, it's not a thing where you're going to doctor's visits all the time and doing stuff like that. It's more of a thing you just managed it, right?
Yeah, it's about every 6 months now.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's still a lot of doctor's visits, but
it was 3 months with the steroid injections, but now it's about every 6. And lost Dr. Ian Coney, but he's doing research for a pharmacy, and actually he may have come out with something in Europe here recently that could maybe help slow what I have going on with what they call molecular scissors that will confuse the cells that create the RP from dying. It may be some hope. And the USH2A gene is one of the most highest percentage genes of RP. So pharmaceutical companies will always pay attention to the problem that has the most people that could buy their drugs or have their surgery.
Sure.
So I'm on to Dr. Alexi now, which worked at Duke.
And he had there were some complications to some of the medications I was taking. He has to take very specific vitamins and supplements that are supposed to help slow the progression. And then he got cataracts. So he had cataract surgery 2 years ago or something.
2 years ago, right?
So I'm proud of myself for remembering that. So yes, so that kind of stuff. So doctor's visits and stuff he has to take, but he handles all of
liver
that.
checks. Like I was on vitamin A, like a huge dose for a while, and they just came out recently saying that it doesn't help. So I took vitamin A for like 10 years.
Oh gosh,
10,000 whatever it's called
units or whatever.
Units, yeah. And Dr. Alexi's like, we're going to take you off that. And I'm like, but I thought it helped. He's like, no. So we're adjusting to always try new things.
Mm-hmm. Is there a speech every year now for the first day of school?
I show them the pictures that you use in your article to show what a normal eye is like, peripheral vision, and I tell them to play defense.
Okay.
And tell
He
them to
adjusts in
snap
his
their
classroom
fingers.
too.
Oh, nice.
And I have more seats on the left side where my good eye is and fewer seats on the right side. Which, oddly enough, I had it set up like that before I found out what I had. So you never know.
He was also clumsy before he found out.
I swear I remember seeing Zack sitting on the right-hand side, 2 rows over, homeroom or something, against the wall, like chilling.
And coaching, you're like, if you're stretching down on the ground, just look out because here I come.
The kids are pretty good. I think because we've been there for so long, he basically has a reputation for who he is and how he teaches, and most people know. And yes, that is something.
I can hear kids whispering.
You can't say things under your breath.
No.
The things I hear walking down the halls at West Carteret to my room.
Yeah, he heard something. He was in his in the living room in his chair watching football or some other sport because that's all he does. But he kept hearing something. And I was like, I do not know what you're talking about. So he turned everything off. He made everybody be quiet. He's like, you got to hear that. It's like a buzzy kind of noise. And I was like, I don't hear a thing. And I went to get the mail, and it's someone probably 5 houses down with a drill in his garage. And he could hear that. Like
I
super
am becoming
sensitive.
Daredevil.
Super
super sensitive.
And I do have.
This is just the first
somebody
step.
got me a Daredevil thing to put in my room. So it's kind of neat.
Well, Shelton and Tiffany, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your story with us.
Thank you for having us. And y'all do a great job with the News Times.
So proud of you.
Local sports and just local news. We need to keep it going.
Thank y'all.
I'm Pastor Carl Zarowski.
I'm Pastor Brian Lassiter. And I'm Pastor Bill Clear. You know, right now, more than ever, faith matters.
Every Sunday here on the radio, a few local pastors discuss faith in the news and how it relates to you.
We explore local, state, and national issues through the lens of faith.
We look at the role of Christians in our world and ask, should the faithful be doing more?
Join us Sunday mornings at 8 for Faith Matters only on the Talk Station.